was, because again, their project was moving along, and they contacted me, not King Milling, but Steve did, and said, we need to get this going. King Milling's gonna pay for it, I've got the letter of intent, et cetera. And the whole thing was,
I think that was a transformer, actually.
our transformer, and we don't wanna delay it, another month, we need to do it now. So it's either I with Steve, going, all right, I'm giving you, as the chairman, I'm giving you the go-ahead, to go ahead and place that order. It's not gonna get billed until after we approve it, because it takes, it's not like, a lot of times they have to make the transformer when you order it. So that type of thing, and again.
That's already part of the policy too. There's that paragraph that says if something in excess of 10,000 is needed because the delay is not acceptable, then inform the chairman and get it done, so.
And I'd like to keep that in there. My basic point is, revenues have gone up, expenses have gone up, inflation has gone up.
And it's arbitrary $10,000.
It's arbitrary $10,000. But I really think in the past, it just seemed like, that seems like a high limit. It's just like this PR.
Do we
gut
know?
feeling.
Well,
I
that's
think
I think that's where we can justify it. It's not, the limit is what we need to justify, what's our justification for raising it to anything? Or maybe 10,000 is already too high, how do we know?
Okay, here's,
That's why I like just to have some information.
Well, yeah, I just
first.
think industry standard based on an auditor or a rate maker's comment to say that they
Yeah.
get 25,000.
That's a pretty good data point, but yeah.
Is that, does the MMPA have any numbers on this? Or anybody, any of the other organizations have any?
We could probably pull, there's probably
Maybe
not
just
formal
ask.
studies.
Yeah, but what do you guys do? Where are you at? What's your limit? Are we in the middle? Are we at the bottom? Get an idea where things are. I think a lot of universities, we do a lot of work with universities, and they all have some dollar amount that's their hard limit. They have to go to purchasing to approve anything above. And I'm sure that all the other small municipal power organizations have something similar.
The one methodology that I know Greg was looking into, because we talked about this years ago, Harry was maybe, I don't know, Harry, you might have been only like a percentage of revenues, because really that's your exposure. You see what I'm saying?
well,
It's really, $50,000 seems like a lot, but if you're a $100 million utility, it might not be.
so if you
So
looked
your
at,
exposure is a percentage of revenues or expenses.
and I'm trying to recall, but I don't have it with me and everything. At one time, when we were talking, again, this is two managers ago, when we were looking at this, there was something in the charter, and
Nothing in the charter pertains to us. I think the city might have a different limit and they're wanted to be, keep them in
okay,
line,
I don't know.
but in our section of the charter, there's nothing.
Okay,
What limit do you have on Mike Burns at the city? Does he have a dollar limit that he can't sign off on unless he gets board approval,
Yes.
council approval? What's that number?
5?
Yeah.
Is it still 5? I kind of thought it was buying full.
No, I don't think we've raised it up over that,
Okay.
not too long.
The city does have like half the revenue of claim power though.
Exactly.
Maybe a quarter.
What Andy's referring to
Nine.
is in principle, board, staff, where do the responsibilities of oversight lie with that detail? I'm thinking that if we don't increase the 10,000 number, it's going to equate to a long laundry list of inefficiencies that are gonna hold up the overall quality of this company. And I think we need to raise this sooner than later, because I think the staff has shown that there's a lot of trustworthy accountability happening with the decision that would be made without our direct input every month. And if that was not the case, I'd be more cautious, but
well,
to me,
and I agree with you 100%, but also remember your, and certainly a new board or different people, you could go and revise it, change it again, but you're also setting, standards or, yeah, I mean, we have a great staff, we have a great company, we have great employees, but you're trying, when you're setting these policies, you're setting for the future that might be 20, 30 years in advance, further down the road, and we're not on this board, or some of us might be, or Steve's gone, or Ryan's retired, and you're getting different, so you're trying to set, I mean, it's not just that we can trust the people that we have now, it's you're setting the standard for the future, and you might have, you know, I'm just saying, that's what you're setting the standard for,
Longer than what's in front of our face now,
correct.
I hear what you're saying.
Well, if we were to do what Greg had proposed, percent of revenue.
Steve,
Yeah.
don't
So
say,
what Greg had proposed,
Well,
you
Greg
wanna
originally,
know.
he said Greg originally
Oh, okay.
proposed it some years ago. Then that would, in fact, be able to be a policy that would be carried forward 15 years into the future or more.
And really, personally, I like that approach more, and I think the board's been comfortable with just a flat dollar amount, because they know where it always stands, you see what I'm, but let's say we did increase the limit, but we lost a bunch of big customers, or our rates significantly decreased, and now all of a sudden, my limit, maybe we increased it to 30,000,
Mhm.
but our revenue is 6 million in the future instead of 9. Now I'm able to spend a lot higher percentage of those available dollars to use on whatever, on anything I might deem okay. So percentage of revenue is always, your exposure is the same year to year. Even though your dollars might be higher, the company's in the same position
Mhm.
relative to the previous year, of how many dollars you have.
and I'm just gonna say, I still think you gotta have some verbiage in there of essential.
How do we define that though?
I don't know, so here's
That's where it gets tricky.
okay, so here's my, if the amount was 30,000, a couple years ago, Greg
Yeah.
wanted to buy a electric car, and use it, for around town, but again, we're an electric company, you know, and everything, and the board basically said, no, we don't think it's an appropriate use of our money, we don't, you know, maybe sometime in the future when they get more reliable and can do different things, but at that time, the board said no. And my point being is, all of a sudden, if you had a $30,000, it's non-essential, but he could have said, you know what, I'm buying it. And that's where, you know, I still think there's gotta be some kind of,
So FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, they have a set of general ledger numbers, and within those general ledger numbers, there's certain plant accounts that a 370, that was a meter, 368 is, forgetting, you know, 368 is always a transformer. And we can't just decide to put the purchase of a vehicle in the 368 account because it's against FERC standards, and our auditors would say, well, you're misclassifying this, and do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
right,
So there are certain things that always fall in the same plant accounts. What if we defined a spending authority, like defined essential items as items that fall in certain plant accounts?
that's,
Does that
I mean,
make sense?
I just think there has
If
to
you
be,
were to do that, you'd have
If
to,
you-
you'd have to.
Because otherwise, I just want, how does, somebody might think a server for a computer system is essential, somebody might not.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Somebody would say, hey, this is for our AMI, and somebody might say, well, you still could go read it by hand. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
What's the definition of essential versus non-essential? So I'd like some objective way to define that instead of subjective.
and that's fine, I'm just saying that I'm just using that as an example, that if you had the authority of 30,000, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't or you should, I'm just saying that, there was an instance that somebody, if they wanted to, could have put their thumbs up to the board and said, it's in my realm of what I can do, and I'm doing it,
Right.
and we might have been going, again, and I'm going by charter, the only thing that we had, we set policy, but the only thing that we had, in the day-to-day operations of low light and power is to hire and fire the general manager. And if we don't like something that's going on, that's the only means. So again, that's why I'm saying for the purchase, I am more comfortable with having something that defines it a little bit more than just a flat dollar amount. I don't know what, if it's like you said, it needs to fall into this accounting system or these numbers or whatever.
Well, the only reason I said that is it sounds like you almost want two different spending authorities. And to
Yeah,
find
I'm
that,
not sure,
I'm
I'm
thinking.
I'm not in favor of that. I think that typically a board's role is to oversee. Our role here is primarily oversight, we're not actually out doing the work.
Right.
And dollar amounts historically have been the way we do oversight for spending. I'm not against maybe switching over to percent of revenue. That makes some sense to me. But I'm not sure we want to get into the weeds with saying, okay, only for these expenses, you'll have this dollar amount or percentage amount, and then for everything else, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me for what our role is here as a board.
Okay.
If we unlock 5,000 to 10,000 more, does that make a massive difference for what's coming up for you guys ahead? Can we identify that as a practical step that really doesn't just open the floodgates to potential doomsday, but ultimately, thinking pragmatically?
We'll have a L1P Tesla on our roof.
That's right.
Go ahead, Bill, you were saying.
But I do think, Perry's worst case scenarios must be considered, and I appreciate the wisdom of thinking larger than just where we are today. At the same time, we can't afford to stay put too much longer before things become very inefficient and we lose that productivity that we're becoming known for.
Well, on that floating thing, you just took the,
Yeah, I
The
just
overall-
grabbed, say, 0.15%, kind of in the middle of where we've been historically since 2000, anyway, it was like about 13 grand. So if we were to do a policy based on a percentage of revenue, say we take 0.15%, that's about 13 grand, 12,995 or something like that. So that may be an option, and that's just a number I pulled out of what you had here in your
And well, keep in mind that only goes back to 2009.
True.
That was
Maybe
probably
0.2% is better.
Well, that was probably, the limit at the time of 2003 was probably, I don't know, 0.2 or
0.2, maybe
0.25, something like that. So when you're looking for something in the middle. Yeah, I guess I just like to
0.25%
know
of
what's.
revenue is not unreasonable. We're
Yeah,
probably
well,
looking for some guidance from,
ultimately, the board, I guess they could have both, but the revenue would limit exposure. At the same point, it may not solve inefficiencies in purchasing items for projects.
And that's where I was
So
kind of thinking
what
about
would the
double.
board prefer? Ultimately, you could probably accomplish both. Do you see what I'm,
Mhm.
accomplish both? It might just require a quarter or 0.3% to do that, and I'm gonna have to go and look at specific upcoming projects, or use probably the previous 12 months historical data to see how many times different things fell in certain dollar amounts.
Mhm. But I think, for me, that would probably be the most useful, is over the past 1 to 3 years or whatever, what have been the big purchases over 10,000? And for how much were they? Because then at least we get a feel for what impact changing the limit would have. So if in the past 2 years, we've had this many as such an amount, then moving the limit tells us how many are now fall under that limit, and what impact would that have. I'm still, even though I wanna keep things simple, I also could see some value in having two separate limits. One being if it's already part of an approved project, I don't see why that limit should have to be anywhere near 10,000, it should be way higher to me. I mean, even, if you already said, hey, here's this project that we're implementing this year, and there's gonna be a $50,000 expenditure for this and a 35 for that, I don't see why both of those couldn't just be approved as soon as you guys are ready to make the purchase. So we essentially approved the spending of it, not really, but I mean, we kind of approved the intent of the project, so why would there need to be a limit on that? But if it's something, even if it's core equipment like poles, but you wanna buy $100,000 of poles, I can see where, maybe we don't wanna spend all that much just yet, even for a great deal, but. And so that's where I could say maybe, it's been approved on a project already and itemized that, hey, we know we're gonna spend that, go ahead and do that. And if it's something else, then maybe we'll put it a little lower and.
I think what we've seen in the past when we approve a big project is, staff come back to us with, a couple, 3 bids.
Yep, and they often are different than what was
And
there.
then we, try to get an approval
Yes.
based on that. And I don't think that would change. Do you think that would change?
Well, this is funny because we have our budget in May, and in May, we're going to approve our capital budget in total. What I expect each project to come in at falls within that capital budget, but ultimately what we approved is the total dollar amount.
Mhm.
I don't know if we ever technically really approve a project. I feel a project is approved, especially on the system upgrades, is once the engineering proposal has been accepted. I consider that the board's going forward with it. I know we've presented the 5-year plan, it's been accepted. I've given the board an estimate of how much this project is gonna cost in their capital budget, and they've been okay with that estimate. Now they've accepted engineering approval. Everything else from here on out, I still, over $10,000 bring to the board. But at that point, in my mind, I'm wondering why.
Mhm.
Right.
We've approved, and everybody knows this is going forward, but we're still gonna wait for all the materials within this project, 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever it is, till the board meeting to approve.
I guess I wasn't paying attention that was your process, because myself, with Blue Cross Blue Shield, I'm in the marketing department. They give us X amount of money for this project, this project, this project. If we come in under it, the great thing about it,
You get a bonus?
no, not at all.
You keep it.
But the great thing about that project, if we are able to come under it, that money is earmarked here, and because I might have a project that went over a little bit. I haven't had to, I don't remember the last time I've had to go to my director level or what have you to say, we're moving ahead and we're spending the money. Not at all. We moved ahead. I don't want you guys sitting around saying, Jesus, we gotta wait for the board to okay this. We've got a lot of movement going on here in Lowell, and I don't wanna miss our opportunities that's happening here.
What I view this as is having a different amount or increasing it is relieving the pressure on Steve and the board chair. Because if you read, like what you were saying is, if Steve, and it's happened, very infrequent, but if you read that, so any project, if there's gonna be any kind of delay, if they could, and it was over 10,000, they could come to me and we could discuss it, and I would go, and if I gave my okay, they could go ahead and proceed with that project in here. I think that's the only, increasing the dollar amount, in my mind, is the only thing that's doing is putting the burden on the whole board instead of putting it on one board member and Steve. And that's in my opinion, because again, the purchase of any product, service with cost excess 10,000 shall be considered and approved by the Board of Light and Power unless obtaining such board approval will cause an unacceptable delay and a failure to comply with the time requirement for delivery of the project completion. I mean, you can say that for just about everything.
But we don't abuse that, we don't use that
No.
excessively.
But that's what we're trying to.
I think that verbiage
Protect
has to
against.
stay no matter what. we do.
Right, I agree with that.
I'm not against going to a percentage. It makes sense to me. I don't know what that number is yet, but, you know, because we still are an oversight
Mhm.
group, and we really do need, we have a responsibility to make sure that the next director of the Lowland Power doesn't decide to come in and maybe he's a spendthrift or she, and they spend a lot of money and get us in financial trouble there. So that would not be, so we can't just remove a cap, obviously. We just have to have a cap that keeps with, you know,
So,
changing conditions.
so this was back, when was this? So when, I guess the question is, when was the 10,000? Where does that go back to? What year?
At least 0203.
Okay, and what was our revenue and,
That year.
Yeah, it was all paper copies. I kind of quickly said at the beginning, we didn't go back and dig all those out. We have them. Probably $4 or $5 million if I had to just backtrack. We were at 5.7 in 09. Probably
so I guess,
4
I mean, I guess what you're saying is if you look at what that percentage was back then, and if you make that same percentage, what number does that come in?
0.2%. That's 0.2%. Say $5 million, 0.2%.
So what's, I'm not the numbers guy like you guys are.
0.2% of 9 million is 18,000.
And the table he gave us, on your tablet there is like 0.17 down to 0.12. So if we went to 0.2 or 0.25%, that would probably carry us through the next decade or two, and eventually, it could be changed by a future board, but at least we're setting up a more reasonable precedence. I like that idea, I think that's reasonable.
So is that a motion?
I am gonna move that we increase the cap, or change cap from a set dollar amount of $10,000 to 0.2% of revenue going forward.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
So we don't have any justification of why that's a good number?
We're basing it upon what we believe was the intent in 2003, in the 2002-2003 budget cycle, when it was last,
And what was their intent? Like, why did
About
they pick
0.2%.
10,000? But why did they pick that? I guess,
I see what you're saying.
yeah, I mean, why was 10,000 felt to be a safe limit at the time? I mean, that's,
Because it was probably 2,000 before that, or 5,000.
yeah, I mean,
Realistic.
usually these types of things should be reevaluated every year or two, but it went on for 15 years, we didn't change it, but that's why I like the idea of tying it to something, but even then, it's kind of, if we're gonna tie it to 0.2, do we need to say like 0.2 rounded to the nearest thousand, so we're not trying to figure out whether you're 5 cents over a limit or?
We probably should say 0.2% for the current fiscal year budget. Would that be correct, or previous?
From the fiscal year budget,
Because that'll float
The
every
approved
year.
budget,
Yeah.
yeah.
it'll float.
And so if we have a really off year in the tanks,
Right.
that number,
Right, and
even though you're staying at that 2%, the dollar amount that they have, it goes down, so because right now you're only looking at,
Because it only have to change once per year at the most, right? I mean, this isn't a number that's gonna float.
It's not gonna float every month, right?
it'll just float every year.
Yeah. So whenever the new budget would be approved, it would just say, okay.
Yeah, ultimately, I mean, I see where Jeff's coming from, because Jeff feels that, 203, that board must have been okay with roughly a 0.2% exposure limit, so
Mhm.
that's why we're basing that,
Yeah,
and
that-
sure, ultimately the board has decided is that 18, it equates to roughly 18,000 now, is that acceptable?
17,327.
So,
Is that gonna help?
yeah.
Yeah,
to answer Andrew's question, that's the one thing I haven't looked at.
Okay.
You said, like I said, there's two things. Is this gonna prevent efficiencies? And is, what does the board feel like with exposure? There's a potential that this percentage of revenue could solve both. We just-
Right.
I don't know.
But
for
is that the
certain
right
if it's-
number that will really help? That's the other question, you know, how many purchases fall between 10 and 18?
Right, polls for sure do.
So what were,
So it,
so what was your recommendation gonna be coming into this?
I
Or do you just wanted to have this discussion? Or,
truly didn't know if the board would be willing to do anything, because I remember the last one. And it just didn't go well, so I just thought a general discussion and whatever the board felt comfortable with.
what was the last one?
There was zero increase.
Right. When was that?
What year
11,
was
12?
that?
2011, probably 12. Year two after I started with them.
Okay.
Well, I seconded the motion because I simply just would like to unlock a bit more funds for you guys to be able to use, but at the same time, I need to know it's gonna help you, and that we didn't rush into a decision.
Andrew, if you're more comfortable with directing Steve to come back with some hard numbers next month, you can make a motion to table. I think that would.
That is
follow
correct.
Robert's rules.
To table the
So
motion?
table my motion.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask, was what's the process for?
Yeah.
So I would make a motion to table the motion? That's how it goes?
Correct.
I believe so.
And then you can vote on your motion now,
Okay,
if there was a second.
so I guess I would move that we table the motion until the next meeting with the intent of having the information to approve something at that meeting.
I'll second
Okay, so I definitely don't wanna wait longer than that.
okay,
You know, but-
any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. So we'll bring that back up, and Steve will give us some more information at our May meeting.
And I appreciate the discussion, this was very helpful, knowing that the board's in favor of going down a percentage of revenue.
Mhm.
So it was pretty valuable, now I can come back with expenses and you'll probably end up setting the threshold of revenue depending on what expenses fall under.
Mhm.
All right, let's move on. Fifth item, carpet bid approval. On the 7th of March, Lowell Light and Power, along with the city of Lowell, issued a request for proposal for carpet projects at both City Hall and Lowell Light and Power. So the RFP did itemize out Lowell Light and Power's portion of the project and the city hall's portion of the project. Two vendors responded to the RFP and participated in the mandatory walkthrough of the building. Those two vendors were Beecham Flooring and Forever Flooring. Bids were opened this past Monday, and that's why we sent out a revised board packet. The bids were sealed and done in accordance with the correct RFP process, and I say that because obviously Beecham Flooring is our board chair. So 3 bids came back. We got quotes on a straight and narrow, a licorice, and an ingrain carpet. All 3 carpets were looked at and kind of approved for aesthetic purposes by Lowell Light and Power office staff, including all the women in the office. I didn't wanna say this is the one we're getting. The lowest bid was the licorice carpet, which the entire staff really, really likes. It's more of a dark black carpet. We have samples. Do we still have samples downstairs?
Yes.
Could you quick go run and get them? What's that?
Dark black.
Yeah.
It sounds like, I know you're trying to say it's just funny to hear black is black, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like a lighter
Has
shade.
some gray tones through it.
Yeah, we looked at a lot of carpet, those like maybe a lighter shade of gray
Yeah.
or light black. So it's my and staff's recommendation to go with the low bid with Beecham Flooring of the Mannington licorice carpet of $13,560. And Ryan's getting those samples if you'd like to see them before you
Does
approve.
that keep us within budget of our originally approved?
It does, it does. So as we move throughout the packet,
It looks like a pretty good deal. I assume that you'll be abstaining from this vote?
Yes.
coming into this month, we had $24,600 left in the total project. That does not include the appliances and the TV we purchased for that room. Megan, does that include all of, it doesn't include the final payment to the contractor, but we've already paid for the majority of that work. And I believe the painting's done. And I believe this epoxy is not included there, and that was roughly 3,000. So,
Exactly what I think.
you wanna, can you put it right up against the wall? Sure.
Don't scratch the paint.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you give us a banner wave?
That's as good as it's gonna get.
This is a 18 by 36. It is, what they wanted is in a 12, or 24 by 24 with a 90-degree turn. So it'll kind of look a little checkerboard throughout.
To answer your question though, Jeff, with the flooring, with the appliances, we have staff labor in here. We've actually done more things than I thought we would do to assist in the project, but we should come in under budget, I project, unless there's a lot of payroll labor that I haven't seen yet. Nice to know that, hopefully not. But to me, it looks like we're gonna be within budget.
Very good. Well, I make motion that we approve the $13,560 for the licorice Mannington, is that correct?
Yep.
Offered by BG Flooring.
I'll support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. I will be abstaining. All those in favor, or
Just
I
a
would,
quick process question.
Yep.
So is the only concern we have to worry about is just the abstaining from voting when someone, a board member is doing it, so.
I mean, it
Just wanna
was,
make sure there wasn't anything else that had to be,
it was sealed bid and everything. I mean,
Yeah.
technically, I mean, it was, but I just, for purposes, I think it's best that I abstain.
right, oh, definitely that, but I just didn't know if there's anything else process-wise we had to do, but,
Nope, it was a sealed bid process.
okay.
I would say that because there's a $10,000
It
difference,
should be a,
we probably have a pretty good deal coming
Yes.
from BG Flooring.
Yep.
And that is appreciated.
and I would, because of this, I would like a roll call vote.
Fair enough.
Mhm.
Any more discussion, I guess? Schraben,
Yes.
and Keelan,
Yes.
Dickerman,
Yes.
Cadwalder,
Yes.
And
then Beecham
abstain.
Beecham abstain. All right,
Licorice it is.
here we go, thank you. We're excited, we're getting close, as you can see.
Mhm.
I don't know if anybody checked out the break room, but it's looking sharp.
Oh, it's stunning.
Yeah.
That looks pretty awesome. Last item, Megan, if you can pull up the VGP program. Last month, we talked about the mandatory voluntary green pricing program that all utilities, municipals included, must offer to their customers by April 20th of this year. This program is mainly going to be administered by the Michigan Public Power Agency. It'll work such that customers can visit our website, click a link. They can choose from a 25, 50, 75, or 100% renewable energy option. They'll be sent an email with their choice. The MPPA will be sent an email and we'll be sent an email. We have a new rate that we're making within our DAFRAN system that will allow us to put them on this VGP rate. The one thing that I just didn't think about doing, because this MPPA is administering the program, we should still formally adopt the rate they're recommending per kilowatt hour for this program. And they've done studies on this based on supply and demand and future costs of RECs and administration costs. And they want to keep things in line with the industry. I think Consumers Energy also charges 1 cent per kilowatt hour. So that's MPPA's recommendation. So my recommendation for the VGP program is to offer the rate at 1 cent per kilowatt hour. In theory, you could set it whatever you want, but I'm gonna defer to the MPPA and their research to go with what they're recommending. And obviously, Consumers is larger and has a lot of resources, and they've decided best to choose that rate, and that's been approved by the MPSC as well, so. Just looking for the board's approval on the rate.
I'll move that we approve that, right.
I want you to do it.
I support it.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
And no one's requested this yet, have they?
They have not, no one has
Okay.
requested this. We're
The
not,
expectation
So it's good to
is
be
that
ahead of it.
you may not get that many
not that many,
No.
requests.
correct.
Understood.
Performance data for the month of March. Total electric sales were down compared to the previous year by 6%. Residential sales were down by 2%, and commercial sales were down by 6 to 7%. A lot of this is a direct reflection on the reduction in rates that we're starting to see. I've done an analysis. Our largest customer, for example, and I've already communicated this with them and had a conference call, they're saving $4,000 to $6,000 a month. So there is direct savings to many, many people with our change of rates. Customer count on the residential side was down by 3 compared to the previous month. Commercial, we were up by 5. Going down the middle of the page, sales in January compared to January 2017 were pretty much dead even, and peak demand in February was almost dead even compared to that of the previous month, so very close statistics. Residential and commercial billing statistics, the end of the quarter will be next month, so we'll have updated data there. I did research and calculate some fun statistics for everybody though. Wanted to toot Lowlight and Power's horn, and Perry's mentioned to me based on the latest edition of the Public Power magazine, all of which I've subscribed for you. It comes every couple months. It talks about really promoting the utility. Based on the 640 kilowatt hours per month average that you can see in this table over the last 5 quarters that residents use, Consumers Energy as of March 2018 charges $29.65 more per 29.65% more than we do for a customer using 640 kilowatt hours. That equates to $24.70 a month per resident on average. With based on 2,341 residents, that's $57,822 we're saving residents a month. That's $700,000 a year on the residential side alone, and that does not take into consideration the summer rates that consumers will have, I believe May or June through September, where anyone over 600 gets charged a peaking rate that's 5 or 6 cents higher than normal. So this $700,000 estimate is assuming their winter rates. So on the residential side, we're saving residents, I fairly can say, at least $700,000 a year. So just some fun statistics.
Put another way, you can say we're saving them 24%, 25% if they were with consumers. We're 25% cheaper than consumers for a 640 kilowatt per month.
That's what you're saying is an
That's
extra
huge.
$24.
$24.70.
So their average bill would be from 80 to 104.
Yeah, so it's about 25%.
Yeah,
Yep.
more than that even.
Anyway, if you'd like those numbers to, I know Tina, you like bragging Lowlight and Power Up, and we
Yeah.
appreciate that, so you can tell everyone that fun statistic.
That's probably a number the chamber might like.
That's
I actually at the expo talked with a realtor, and Sharon and I, probably more Sharon or the office staff, we're gonna even get in touch with realtors to know the electric savings of being in our district. I mean, it might not be a make or break. People buy houses on emotional decisions, I understand that, but when you're talking of locating an area for potentially a lifetime, that's a lot of money over the course of time that you could use going on trips, going out to eat.
Well, they went over 5 years. It said, what, $24 a month?
Essentially
Over
25
5
bucks
years.
a month, so that's
Pretty-
300 bucks a year,
Yeah,
5 years, $1,500.
You could run a space heater all day long,
yeah.
all year round, and be just fine.
Probably not.
Anyway,
But I mean, even just, well, the impressive part to me is it's $700,000 per year for the community, right? That's, I mean, that's gotta help the economy, you'd think.
right,
Local economy, I mean, if there's that much more money available in the community for other things besides paying electric bills, I mean,
yeah, and certain rate classes were not. I mean, frankly,
Right.
on our 221 rate, we're the closest, but it it's just how the makeup of our town is and
Mhm.
our peak load. But I did look with Sharon this past week on the 221 side, any commercial customer using more than 1,000, we for sure are cheaper than. And a lot more in the 10% neighborhood for anyone on the 221
I was
rate.
gonna ask you that.
It's not as quite-
I'm sure
but-
I use a lot of
But
energy.
10% for a commercial customer might equate to a total dollar amount that's greater than 25. You see what I'm
Yep.
saying? I mean, they're using thousands of kilowatt hours a month, so even though it's 10%, it could still be more.
Yep.
So well, I'm not saying we're cheaper than consumers of every single person in this town, but in total, we're saving people likely millions of dollars.
Right, well, that's why I like looking at that big picture part of it, 'cause that's, when you take a look at the whole area, that, you know, or at least our service area, it's kind of a big positive impact to the local economy, you know.
Right.
It's, in a way, I mean, it's, if you compare it to us not being here, but
Right, I
it's,
was thinking, if we were sold, you have that influx of cash, but every single person would experience a tax, so to
Yep.
speak.
well, increased
On the
cost of
residents,
living.
like $700,000 from this point potentially on for forever.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cost of living,
Right,
you know, so it's one nice way to measure our impact.
right. Investments in cash, we were down by 4.6% compared to the previous month. This was directly tied to the first payment we made to Consumers Energy for the gas regulating station. We're still at a healthy amount of 3.2 million, and that's 14% more than the previous year. And we have a lot of outgoing payments this month. I've already seen our first run of payables. Delinquents, the numbers don't look pretty, but the delinquent, in the aging analysis, $6,000 is attributable to one customer, and that's our tenant at Chatham. But progression has been made in negotiations, and I've received verbal and hopefully soon firm commitments that all utilities will be paid with a potential separation. So I'm actually really not worried about those delinquents at this time. It looks like we're gonna get that money. But overall, we're at $44,828 in our aging analysis, less than the previous month and less than the previous year. 6,000, we're hoping to knock off very soon. Any questions on the performance data? Moving to outages, we had 2 outages in the month of March that affected 18 customers. Those both happened on the 12th of March, related to a loose hot tap and a bad transformer. And our statistics for the year were at 99.9985%. In that box, you can see that our Katie, Sadie, Safety are all better than last year, with the exception of Katie is up by 0.31 minutes. And last month, I believe it was Andrew who had requested some historical data based on the APPA E-Reliability annual reports. So I have to give the credit to Megan for tracking this down. The first chart here, and we're always in blue, so keep track of the blue line, is the SAIDI number, and we're comparing ourselves to the average SAIDI in the tracker, the average SAIDI to utilities in our region, and average SAIDI to utilities in our customer size, and that'll be the true for all graphs. So this is the average interruption duration in minutes for customers, so lower is better. As you can see, we've been trending down the last couple of years, and in 2017, we were significantly beating our competition and peers, and we were at, based on the last 5 years, an all-time low mark compared to any previous year for any other of the customer groups. When we look at SAIFI, it's the average number of instances a customer will experience, the average number of instances a customer will experience in terms of an interruption. As you can see, in 2017, we were at a historical best, at least in the last 5 years, and better than any previous mark that classifications have had in the past. Katie is the average duration in minutes of an interruption, so that how long the average outage will take. You can see their last couple of years we've been fairly consistent. We've trending down since 2015, and compared to last year, or 2017 when there were hurricanes and all sorts of things all over. I don't know if that's direct. Logic says that's directly impacting the 2017 data, but with that being said, even if they were back to the historical numbers, we were again besting our peers. MAFE is the momentary outages And Ryan and I did look into this further. In October of 2016, our SCADA system was up and running and installed. That SCADA system can tell when we have a momentary outage. Prior to October of 2016, we just didn't have
No data.
the data or the tracking mechanisms. Ryan did go back and look, from the time that was installed through December 31st of 2017, we did not have one momentary outage. So this
Wow.
is a correct data point showing that we had 0.
At least starting at
With that,
2016 or,
starting from October of 16 through 2017, so this data is correct. Now, we've reported 0 momentary outages on our monthly reports. That being said, when we do our 2018 final report, we're gonna use our SCADA data for the e-reliability final report. So even though we have reported 0 momentary outages thus far, in the monthly data that we show you that we just talked about, we're gonna be reporting the ones that have happened this year because we know we can track them now. Even though the meter doesn't say it's out of power, we still have that data in SCADA, so we're gonna report that. So going forward, you'll see a slight increase in this number. Does that make sense?
mhm.
But for 2017 at least, we can be assured that we did not have any momentary outages.
This is the one that tracks the
Blinks.
blink tower out,
Yeah.
right?
And we had been using, Ron puts together this report and does a great job, and he had been using meter data to
Mhm.
determine if there was a momentary outage or a blink. And we had, and our blinks, they happen so quick, the meter still has power, so we hadn't considered that a momentary outage. We're gonna use our SCADA data that can tell, even if it's a tenth of a second or a second, and start recording those.
At what level does the SCADA see it? Like, it doesn't go per household, does it?
It'll tell what circuit, and we know how many houses are on a circuit.
Okay, so it's just tracking blinks per circuit, not blinks per,
Well, typically it's only in one circuit that's gonna be a blink, unless it's the transmission line.
And it'll be the
Right.
And that
entire
would be
circuit.
very bad.
Would be the entire town, all.
Yeah.
No,
But I
no,
mean,
if it was a
it's-
circuit, it would be the
it's a
entire
circuit.
circuit.
So like when you had the blink that you experienced at home, everybody on your circuit
right.
probably saw it.
But I think that's what happened, right? Was that
Correct.
that one circuit got hit
And 0 of the other
2
circuits
times, yeah.
impacted it. So we could still have a number that's in the tenths, because if your circuit only had 400 people, times by 3 blinks, that's 1,200. But
Mhm.
1,200 divided by 2,800 customers is gonna come out to a blink rate of
Not that,
4, you know what I mean?
right. But we still don't have a way of tracking like blinks at individual meters or anything.
Well, we know, based on the SCADA data, what meters are affected. Because we know
For
what,
circuit blinks, but I'm talking about, does it ever blink at just 3 houses and not for a whole circuit?
No,
Because, I mean, aside from a loose wire, I couldn't think what else would do that.
everything's protected with fusing, so there's no reclosures, there's no automatic reclosures on any of the circuits out randomly on the circuit, so if it goes off, it's gonna stay off at a house.
Okay. That makes sense.
so we do essentially know, I mean, we'd have to do a little bit of work, but we know what customers are in what circuits.
Mhm.
I mean, Ryan, you know, we could like,
Well,
well,
yeah,
everybody
you
on
can
this
tell.
street is gonna be on this circuit, and it would take some querying and stuff like that, but we would be able to tell.
Mhm. Okay.
Last graph is the AC, a measure of the average availability of the distribution system. And you can see in 2017, we also had an awesome year. We were at 99.99%. And I wanted to give you some perspective, 0.01% equates to 53 minutes a year. So when you're talking of 99.99 versus 99.98 versus 97, well, 99 to 97, you're talking an hour and 45 minutes, just to give some perspective. Any questions on the graphs? Overall, things, the tree trimming we've been doing in the AMI system directly benefited our outage statistics. I think that's pretty clear. And the benefit of not having a tornado or something super crazy.
Well, it's kind of both. I mean, just seeing how good 2017 was makes me think that we were probably good and lucky. You know, that it's because just
Definitely
how
some
good it was, it seems like there's a little bit of luck involved, but,
You gotta make your own luck too,
But-
I'm a
right.
firm believer.
well, just like, wasn't it last year that there was the windstorm that, was that last year?
Yeah.
That Lansing dealt with, that we didn't really have a problem,
Mm-hmm.
partly because we you guys had cleared a bunch of those dead trees along,
The river crossing.
yeah. So it's kind of making our own luck in that case.
For sure,
2015 was kind of a rough year, what, was there,
there was
Isn't it that year?
2015, could that have been, we had a transformer
That was the
fire.
transformer, yeah.
We also
Yeah,
had a
that was cool.
fatality at King Milling,
That's
where we
right.
had to
Yeah.
shut off the
That was-
circuit.
that was- Those were both in 2015, so that makes sense.
Yeah, those were
That
hours
explained
long.
our spike in the middle of the other two spikes everyone else had.
So in instances, you can't just turn off King Milling, you just turn off everyone.
Well,
Yeah,
there's
it
a
depends on
certain
the
section,
notices.
I mean, it was,
At the
it was a
time, things were,
situation that just needed to be done.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I mean, there was other things that were going on and people were, but, I mean, when somebody's life is,
Yeah, it was the right call.
yeah.
it was just, you know, and,
Anyway, we'll keep these graphs and just add to it next year and put these in with the report to give some perspective. Income statement, sales 655 versus a budget of 650. We're within 0.94% of the year. And you'll see that total operating revenue, 694 compared to a budget of 661. We're 0.95% over for the year. And total service and total miscellaneous were up. We billed Virgin's Broadband for our work there, and we also have a $7,500 check that came in for the easement to Consumers Energy for the gas regulator project. At the same time, they charge us $7,500 for that easement that we charged them for, so they decided to do that, those rascals, and that showed up in the total generation expenses. So that's the primary reason why our generation expenses were higher than budgeted, because we had $7,500 additional in that department, but it's essentially a wash. Purchase power, under budget for the month, and we're under budget for the year. Distribution department, slightly over budget, but we're under budget for the year. Customer accounting, under budget for the year. Marketing, under budget for the year. Admin, general, outside services, over budget. All that falls in legal, and based on a call that I had today, that's private at this point, it's looking like those legal expenses could be ending very, very soon. So it's good news for everybody. Employee benefits and other compensation were over budget, but that's old news based on that employment agreement and the MERS cost of living adjustment. And as we get down to total operating expenses, you can see Megan's done an excellent job forecasting for the year. We're within 0.08% year to date of budget, $4,708 off, and we are $68,000 over budget in operating income, and that takes us down to net income. And we had an incredible month compared to the budget, and overall we're within 8.5% over budget year to date. It's hard to trend well. I've seen you try to figure it out in the electric industry, but it's just funny the way due dates and weekly invoices compared to DT invoices compared to MPPA invoices fall. But as the year progresses along, it gets closer and closer to accurate. So month to month there might be variances, but year to date we're now right on track. Any questions? If not, we'll move to capital. We spent $346,000 in the month. $256,000 on the regulator station, $21,000 in system upgrades, $10,000 on the natural gas compressor installment purchase agreement payment, $32,000 on roof payments that they decided to finally invoice us for, $20,000 on office renovation project payments, and just under $7,000 for the vehicle replacement fund. So we're left with $441,000 remaining, and Megan and I did talk. We are going to add a column to the spreadsheet reflecting how many dollars we've committed to pay for projects, but just have not been invoiced to us yet, to give a clearer picture of what truly is remaining. Because I think the entire board knows we have expenses for the office renovation project that haven't came due. We have capacitor banks and relays that we've committed to purchasing that are going to hit this. So just kind of always enhancing and improving of what we really have available, but that'll be coming next month. Any questions? Moving to the manager's report, Yesterday was the annual meeting for the APPA, and they had the election of officers, a routine item. They discussed their disaster mitigation and business continuity plan, which was actually very interesting and ultimately something I think Lowell Light and Power should at least think about. Pat Boland, their CEO, is very conscientious about the fact that they were housing all of their data within that building, and that 22 members rely on the MPPA for all their power supply needs and transactions and purchases. And if something were to happen to that building, or they even had a gas leak right when we get started, and they couldn't access that building for a day, but if something were to happen, how do they go on? Because you need to. I mean, yes, the electrons still flow and things of that nature, but it could be a major headache. So ultimately, I think this is something that I'm gonna recommend adding to our strategic plan. All of our DAFRON information is housed in Bowling Green, Missouri, so we're able to access that information from computers elsewhere. But how we go about staying in operation under a worst case scenario, granted we're smaller than the MPPA, they're a $400 million budget, or a $9 million budget, so you have to figure out what's cost effective. But even going through that thinking that if something happened to this building, make sure we could continue to pay our bills, operate, bill customers, read meters, etc. So that was a good discussion. We had a renewable energy update, and we had an annual audit presentation by Plant Moran. I'm the chair of that committee. We had a couple conference calls before that. The only thing of note is there's going to be a GASB standard coming up in the next couple of years, where the MPPA will need to record on their balance sheet the future costs for retirements of plants. The demolition, site restoration types costs, and the MPPA is going to be implementing a new policy to start collecting that money 5 years in advance on a 20% basis over the course of 5 years. So that money is saved, and it's, hey munis, we need to pay for this retirement cost. It's going to be millions of dollars to clean up this site, and we're going to increase everybody's rates. They're going to phase it in over the course of 5 years. That hasn't started yet, but that was a good discussion point yesterday. May 23rd is the MPPA 2018 stakeholders meeting. I have included the save the date and the agenda in your packet. Formal invitations, Susan told me, will be mailed out, I believe, this week. So you should be receiving them next week. It starts at 1 p.m. It's on a Wednesday at the Grand Valley State University Engelhard Center, and a dinner reception. Eberhard. Oh yeah, Eberhard, sorry. Center, and dinner will take place at 5:30 to 7:30, so I encourage all of you to attend.
I went last year.
You're still getting an invitation this year.
I think I can't go, but
Marty?
last year was.
Maybe Jim can go in your place or
Yeah.
something. APPA, the rodeo is taking place a couple weeks from today, we believe. Mark, Zach, and Steve Shade will be competing in the lineman division. Rich will be competing in the apprentice division. Unfortunately, Justin Muchler, who was planning to compete in the apprentice division, he tweaked his back in December, and it's been a nagging, ongoing issue, and just, I don't want to basically, the doctor is restricting him for the next period of time from competing. So, unfortunately, he's not going to be able to compete. We're still hoping he can just attend. He's pretty.
You can take the written test.
There you go. We're hoping he can still attend, but obviously that's a long drive, and I don't know what restrictions will be replaced, but he's pretty bummed, and the guys, I think even from a morale standpoint, having him there would really like it. So we'll see. Hopefully he can attend, and Perry and Tom plan to drive a truck. And Perry, do you have any comments? Light of another rodeo?
Drive straight through, baby.
We should place a policy in place for safety, sleep time or something, I don't know. Can we put you on the clock so you have to rest for a certain amount after 16 hours, or?
It's gonna sit in front of them, they'll be behind you.
Yeah.
Little quick dinner, a Mountain Dew, Snickers.
Anyway, just,
Looking forward to it.
it'll be an awesome time. system generation upgrade process,